Hi there, everyone. I'm Alexi.
And I'm Marley, and we're Sensational Spaces. We believe that in the right environment, we all thrive.
We met at graduate school. We're both occupational therapists by trade, and with that OT licensure that we both still obtain, we use that knowledge and those skills to help families and community organizations and schools in developing sensory-friendly spaces that are uniquely tailored to meet the needs of the people who are going to be using those spaces.
Our why, so we believe that everybody should have an environment in which they can thrive. And so using our occupational therapy lens, we support parents, community members, support staff in fostering their child's development through education and the creation of sensory-friendly spaces within all environments so all can benefit.
Exactly. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk a little bit about sensory processing, and then we're going to dive a little bit more into some different tools and strategies for what you guys can use at home today. So sensory processing is essentially how your body interprets the world around you. So using all of your 8 senses. A lot of us know about like your standard 5, but there's actually 8 senses. So we're going to dive a little bit into each and every one of those right now. It's all about senses and connection, connecting our senses to our environment.
So the first 2 we're going to touch on is the vestibular and proprioceptive input systems. So vestibular input is using our head movement in space to help interpret the environment. So it's those little ears that you have on both sides of your head that have canals in them that when they tilt in different directions, when you're laying down, when you're upside down, when you're on your side, all those different things, the world is being interpreted by those inner ear canals in different ways. So different activities that are really common with these is like swinging, biking, gymnastics, things like that throughout the everyday life that you might be doing in which your head is in different positions. Even just think of like sleeping. I think of that one a lot.
Yeah.
Proprioceptive input is the body's ability to sense its location, movement, and actions. And I like to describe this one as the deep pressure in your joints. So think of when somebody gives you a hug, how it can calm your body if that's something that you seek, like myself. So that it can be obtained by a ton of different strategies in which you're getting deep pressure to the muscles, like as carrying a heavy bag, jumping on a trampoline, jumping if the kids are jumping from the couch onto pillows and crashing, lifting weights, all those things or jumping where they're getting that crashing input into their joints and bodies to help regulate their nervous system day in and day out.
Absolutely. So the next 2 we're going to talk about are interoception and tactile sensory input. Interoceptive is definitely a less known about sense. It's how your body uses the information that's going on to know how we're interpreting what's going on the inside of our body. So I have to go to the bathroom. I feel tired. It's hot in here. Gosh, that was a really cold drink. It's using all of that sensory input, but interpreting how our body is feeling on the inside. So it's also one that's kind of difficult oftentimes for children to express when there's different interoceptive issues going on. You might see more frequent like bedtime wetting, you might see more accidents, difficulty knowing when they're hungry or when to stop eating if there's stuff going on with the interoceptive system. The tactile sensory system is one that is a lot more common. It is using the receptors on our skin, not just our hands, but our skin all over to interpret the world around us. So your skin helps you learn more about temperature, touch, pressure, pain to interpret that environment. So some different ways that you might target the tactile sensory system are using different sensory bins like sandboxes, beans. You might do some painting, finger painting, all the better, or putting it on your feet and walking around even, really getting into it, or doing different activities that bring that attention to the hands and to the skin, like playing with Play-Doh, putty, slime, that kind of stuff.
The next ones that we're going to focus on are auditory and our visual system. So our auditory system is the ability to sense the hearing and listen and observe the connections from the outside world into our internal world and through the ears. And so this is a very sensitive system for a lot of our kids that have ADHD. It's also our number one system in which when we become dysregulated, let's say that we're upset, frustrated, it's the number one system to shut down. So if as naturally we're always like, oh, stop doing that, keep doing that, don't do that. And we keep talking, but in the head of a child, that might just sound like gibberish, or it might just sound like loud noises instead of actually interpreting the language that's coming through their system. So different ways to target this one is calming rhythmic music, auditory filtering headphones, quiet time, just different things that can help quiet that system. Or some kids are also seeking and they need more of that input. So then trying to find different strategies that effectively help them. And they might want the music on more. They might need it louder than the other kids around them. So this system can really vary. And like we said, all of them is very important to get tested by an occupational therapist to know if they're seeking, if they're avoiding, if they're having a hard time registering it, what's maybe going on with their system, because each of our systems, we all have a sensory system, affects differently and interprets things differently. The visual sensory system is all the input that comes in through our eyes throughout the day. And new research is showing that about 60 to 85%, depending on the person, of our day is interpreted by our vision. So without your vision, you have a harder time interpreting your environment. And when you have that, it means that your eyes can really get overloaded. We all feel that, right? Like at the end of a work day as an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, my eyes, like I just want to close them and squish them. To reduce some of that. But like we said, sometimes kids need to have less visual distractions around them in the academic setting or at home. Sometimes they need to have a visual schedule to kind of help them process throughout their day. Some kids like brighter stuff and some like more neutral. It really just kind of depends on their system and how they interpret and adjust to their environment.
So we have two more sensory systems that we're going to touch on now, and that's gustatory and olfactory. Those are fancy words for taste and things that you smell. So your gustatory system is using the sense of taste to allow us to recognize the 5 basic taste sensations that you experience every day when you're eating different things. So that's sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. And so with that, you're taking in and you're experiencing in such a different way, right? So for some kids, if you are somebody who is very much more vestibularly kind of averse, right? Where if you're on a swing and you're spinning and all of a sudden you start to feel nauseous, or if you're somebody in the car and you're just driving and you start to get a little bit car sick, you can actually utilize your gustatory system to support the other sensory systems in your body and help you modulate and regulate. So for somebody who gets car sick or has a harder time on swings and stuff, oftentimes we'll recommend, hey, have something sour, have something with a really intense flavor, like a Warhead or sour Skittles, might have some lemon or like intense peppermint, because those different flavors, those intense flavors can help to regulate your body where you might not feel as car sick anymore. It's pretty amazing. The other sensory system here that we're touching on is olfactory, and these kind of go hand in hand because for certain tastes, you actually need your sense of smell in order to be able to truly recognize them. The olfactory sensory system is using the sensory receptors throughout our nose to pick up the information around us. And through that smelling, we're able to process and interpret our environment. It's something where if you smell fire, it triggers that fight or flight. It triggers that nervous system response of, I need to get out of here, right? If you smell flowers, it's, oh, what a beautiful spring day. How calming is that scent? And essential oils are something that we frequently will utilize for people who are more regulated through having this kind of sensory input, because it's a really easy way to get a good calming olfactory kind of just message to our brain, right? Whether it be a diffuser, you might have a little bracelet that you pop a little bit of oils on, or even on your wrist. So if your kiddo's at school and they need to kind of modulate a little bit, you might just have them wear those little leather bracelets that they can kind of smell, and nobody else around them can really smell it, but it's something that is a simple, easy tool targeting that olfactory sensory system.
What does this have to do with our kids and our environment and our students, and talking about all the things that go on in a daily life? The stressors, right? So routine shifts, expectations, weather changes is a big one here in Minnesota recently. Different expectations since COVID's changed and evolved throughout that experience, unknown of the future, and just different life events and the way that hormonally a child changes too as they grow, and how that impacts can lead to like emotional dysregulation, outbursts. It can lead to aggression, decreased social skills where they internalize things more and they just want to be on their own. Fear, decreased sleep, all those things negatively impact the way that we function throughout our daily life and the way that we interpret things and our sensory systems working collaboratively. And so it's really important that we are in homeostasis, which can be really challenging as a human with so many environmental factors going on throughout our day.
Absolutely. So what can we do about it? Getting to know your own sensory system and getting to know the sensory system of your students if you're a teacher or of your children if you're a parent can be really, really supportive in helping to regulate arousal level. It's really hard for a child to be regulated if the adult figure in their life is not also regulated. So finding different tools and strategies that work for you, which may look very different than those that work for your kiddo. A really easy sensory tool that we love, that we're actually, the reason that we're here with OneThrive is our OneThrive boards that are right behind us. We each have one too, but that is actually a way that we help with our executive functioning skills, and it's also something that targets through our visual sensory system because it has a very organized, clean layout, and they're uniquely tailored to meet the needs that your family has or your school setting has. So that's just kind of one way that we use that specifically, but otherwise helping your students get back into a routine, helping them to increase that social engagement with the parents, with the teacher, with other students, other peers. Getting more structure throughout the day can be something that's a really powerful tool. One of the biggest things that we love, especially as it starts to get nicer out, is getting outside. There are so many sensory systems that are activated. Every single sensory system is activated by just stepping outside. And so that's a really beautiful way of getting into nature and getting into the environment around you to absorb all of that sensory input. So we are really excited to see and just kind of give you a couple quick tools and tips here now. So go ahead, Mara, let's kind of dive in.
So we're going to break it down a little bit per different environment and kind of different sensory systems. So the first one I'm going to kind of talk about is school can often be like a hard stressor for kiddos, and they look forward to summer so much because there's not that routine and there's not the structure and set expectations that occur every day and day in and day out. And some different strategies in the school that you can definitely advocate for your child, whether they have an IEP or a 504 for some accommodations. These are different strategies you can use. So different kinds of seating. So wobble seats, a seat cushion. There's like bumpy cushions that can just sit on. So they get a little bit of movement while they're sitting, but they're not distracting the other kids. They're still attending and focusing, but they have a little bit of flexibility in their system to get that movement out. I love a wobble stool. That's my favorite one of those. They're adjustable up and down depending on the height of the child. I also have a lot of kiddos in the academic system that are looking for that deep pressure. They need that input. And whether you do a weighted vest, another one of my favorites is just taking the elastic band around the bottom of a chair and they can kick it. They can bounce their feet on it. All those different things that our child are often like bouncing their knees, like they're trying to get the input without the assistance, and having that resistive band can definitely help in that sense. Just creating movement breaks, like Lexi said, like getting outside, doing a little walk path with like push-ups and sit-ups and different things to get deep pressure to the joints can just help calm the nervous system. I know for teachers and parents that can be hard to advocate for, especially when there's a big group and getting them all structured, but it really, really can help, and just building that into the routine can be so beneficial for kiddos. Two things that can target the oral system is chewing, resistive chewing, or resistive sucking. So sucking on a mint, chewing on gum. I know a lot of schools are like, oh, no gum. I understand, but when it comes to a kiddo with disabilities, there should be accommodations and different strategies to use, and that is definitely one of them that's very effective in helping calm the nervous system. Our mouth has actually the most amount of receptors than the rest of our body.
So oral input is something, as she was just saying, we have a lot of receptors throughout our mouth. And through getting different oral input, it's actually very calming and regulating to the nervous system. So Marley gave a strategy where she talked about that resistive chew and suck. If your school is saying, nope, you can't have these gum, you can't have these mint, a really good option is something like a Camelback water bottle. Those are a great tool because they have a resistive chewy kind of bite valve where you're getting resistive suck by drinking in, but you also can kind of chew on it. And it's something that, as long as you're allowed to have a water bottle, it looks the exact same as everybody else in the classroom, right? So that's a really good tool. You can also just buy those little bite valves on the top. You can get them on the Camelback website too. So that's a really good tool. Otherwise, anything with a straw in general is going to be a really good tool. Something that we love to do as occupational therapists is use straws as a tool for calming and for just working on that deep diaphragmatic breathing. And so that could look like if you have a pile of goldfish at snack, you can use a straw to try to pick them up and like go fishing. So you pick the goldfish up with the straw and try to put them in your bowl. Once they're all in your bowl, then you also get that kind of that resistive crunch by eating the goldfish.
And these are really good things to do at home, like the home setting. So after school, before school, things like that too. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these tools can be used across settings. It's just good, simple, easy tools. These are things that you often have on hand too. If you don't have goldfish, that's fine. Rip up some paper. That's also working on great fine motor skills. Have the kiddo rip up some paper and try to transfer those. Another way that you can use a straw is by blowing through a straw. If you've got some cotton balls at home or some beads, something, you can have like a little race, right? Where you kind of line them up on the floor or on the table and you try to blow them to see which one goes the furthest. Or you can do more of a modulated breathing where you might take some painter's tape and make a big track on the floor. And then with that, you can go ahead and take your cotton ball and try to blow it along the tape. So lots and lots of easy, fun tools with things that you already have on hand.
Okay, talking about emotional regulation, this is a really challenging one. And like I said earlier, the number one system to shut down is our auditory system. So our ears shut down when we're dysregulated. So thinking about what we're going to do to help in that instances. So thinking of limiting the amount of vocalizations we're having. So really limiting your words to 2 to 3 word phrases during that time. Please stop. No, thank you. Things like that where it's just direct. They know what they're expected. Even sometimes kids, it's better not to use any vocals and just to point or to model how you want the child to respond or what you want them to do. Also, validating feelings is super important. I think our society is getting better and better at that. Just saying, I hear you. I see you're upset. I understand you're frustrated. And hearing those things, it's not saying it's okay. It's just saying, this is what I see, this is what I hear, and those are all validating statements. Another strategy in which you can do to modulate this is to provide some choices. So 2 to 3 choices. I like to do 2 to start, giving 2 choices. Do you want graham crackers or do you want goldfish? And you're in control ultimately as the adult because you gave 2 choices and then they select what they think they have control in that situation as well.
So looking at that co-regulation side of things, you can use your own body and your own words to really modulate and regulate your child by using those different strategies that Marley talked about, getting on their level and really just connecting and communicating with them. Now, when we think about easy movement tools, there are different apps and different websites like Go Noodle. They have a ton of different free resources that you can use in home or in the school setting, and they have different ranges in time too. It might be 2 minutes, it might be 15 minutes, kind of depending on the different video. There's calming videos, more like a flow, more of a mindfulness, and then there's also different videos that are more like big body movement, almost like a workout. So that's a good tool. Otherwise, we love using Cosmic Kids Yoga. Miss Jamie is an awesome resource on that end, and she goes through and she's got a bunch of different themed yogas. Pink Oatmeal is a really great one too. You can go on and find different resources on their website and on their Instagram.
So again, we're Sensational Spaces. We're 2 licensed and registered occupational therapists that create sensory-friendly spaces within homes, communities, and schools. So please reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the different social media platforms to learn more about what we do, how we can maybe assist you guys in setting up and facilitating this environmental modification to help your child thrive day in and day out.
Thank you so much for having us today.
Have a good month.
Bye.